Hi, everybody. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, Texas on Monday, April the 11th. And welcome to our commentary. By the way, before I forget, on Mondays, we usually get together with our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, and we do a podcast called The Week in Review. So I'm going to ask you to listen to that later on. Normally, we record it in the afternoon, and I put it up late afternoon, early evening. And you can listen to that on same page or wherever you follow these videos. The podcast will be available as well. We always talk to Bill every week, and it ends up being a very interesting summary of the events of the week. Obviously, there's a lot of stuff going on, and we're going to get into much of that with our friend Bill Katz. Today, I want to talk about a post that I have over at the American Thinker Monday morning. You can read it again on this page, wherever you follow my video or wherever you follow my blog post. And the article at the American Thinker, the post at the American Thinker, is about judicial confirmations or confirmations to the Supreme Court or confirmation hearings to the Supreme Court. And I make the case that in May or June, when the Supreme Court is expected to overturn Roe v. Wade. Now, they're either going to overturn it completely or they're going to say, we're going to send it back to the states, and every state has the opportunity or the power to do whatever they want with respect to abortion. So in Texas, it'll be the heartbeat, and Mississippi, it'll be 15 weeks, and so on and so on. And then there will be other states on the other extreme, like Colorado. They just passed an extreme abortion law that basically says you can have an abortion anytime you want to, including late pregnancy, which is pretty incredible and horrific, but that's what they passed. So we're moving in that direction of the states basically deciding through their legislatures what type of abortion restrictions they want to have. The net impact of all of this, it's going to lower the volume on Supreme Court confirmations. Supreme Court confirmations have been pretty much for the last 35 years all about abortion. It all began with Robert Bork back in 1987. President Reagan nominated Robert Bork to the Supreme Court, and the Democrats had a fit. They would not put him on the Supreme Court. They ran some of the most outrageous ads against a Supreme Court nominee that had ever been run. And it was, in fact, because of that experience that the word borking, borking somebody, came from that. And when you would go after an opponent, particularly in a confirmation hearing, then the word borking became a part of the political vocabulary. Eventually, Bork did not make it. Somebody else went in his place. But then we went to the first President Bush, who nominated Clarence Thomas. And I'm sure all of you remember what a circus that became. I mean, that was an absolute circus and a travesty what they did to Clarence Thomas. Then you had President Bush with Roberts and Sam Alito. And, Alito was another joke, the way that was done. And then, of course, here more recently, President Trump with Gorsuch, with Kavanaugh, and with Mrs. Barrett. And I think in the case of Kavanaugh, that was a low point, in my opinion, for the Senate. That was a total low point in civility and behavior for the U.S. Senate. And now that the Supreme Court is going to undo Roe v. Wade, it's going to be very difficult to have controversial confirmation hearings in the future because the topic of abortion is not going to be a part of the hearings. I mean, the reality is that the 6 Republicans sitting in the court right now, from Justice Thomas in 1991 to Mrs. Barrett in 2018 or 2019 or 2020, I think it was with her, all of those had to go through a certain level of attacks from the Democrats, and it was because the Democrats were trying to preserve any way they could Roe v. Wade. Eventually, those people got in the courts, and now eventually something good's going to happen, and Roe v. Wade is going to be sent back to the states. So I think we've seen the end of these circus-type hearings that we've grown accustomed to over the last 35 years. I think they'll go back more to the way they used to be, which is that you nominate a judge, everybody looks at their background. It's not so much about ideology as it is about the background of the judge and what kind of reputation, temperament the judge has. And then, people get in with 90 votes. It used to be that way. It used to be that most of the men and women nominated for the Supreme Court, I guess mostly men back then, would get in with like 90 votes. In fact, the last two Supreme Court nominees of President Eisenhower didn't even take a vote. It was done by a voice vote in the US Senate. And that's kind of the way it used to be. There was a lot more elegance. It was a much better system. But everything changed, as I said, with Roe v. Wade and the Democrats trying to protect abortion. Well, I think that's over now. I think the next time we have a Supreme Court nominee, whether he or she is appointed by a Republican or Democrat president, you're not going to have Roe v. Wade hanging over the hearings. It's going to be more of a normal hearing where they ask questions about judicial philosophy, and you're going to basically disinfect the hearing from Roe v. Wade and abortion and all the stuff that we heard during the last 35 years. So I'm pretty sure that Roe v. Wade will be overturned in May or June. I'm pretty sure that at the very least, it will be one of those things where the court says, look, this is a matter for the states. And then the fights about abortion will take place at the state level, not at the Supreme Court level, not at the confirmation for Supreme Court level. It'll happen at the state legislatures, and the voters, through their elected representatives, will have something to say about abortion. And if it goes to the courts, it'll be the state courts that will decide it, not the federal courts. So I think that that's where we're moving. The good news of that, of course, is that you're not going to have this circus of confirmation hearings that we've had in the past. And as I say, Judge Kavanaugh was the low point. I mean, that was a disgrace, the way that man was treated. When you're having members of the U.S. Senate looking over his, yearbook photos when he was in high school, or some of the things that he wrote when he was back in high school, or you had that woman who said that 37 years ago she went to a party with him. She doesn't remember where the party was. All she remembers was that it was in 1992 or 1982 in the state of Maryland. So that was a despicable moment for the court, a despicable moment for the Senate in particular. And I think that now that Roe v. Wade will soon be behind us, I believe that that's going to be the end of these crazy Supreme confirmation hearings. And I think the country and the Senate is going to be much better off because of it. The confirmation hearings for Roe v. Wade really poisoned the well in the Senate. It created bitter enemies of these senators who were forced to play a certain role. I mean, if you were a Democrat and there was a Republican nominee or a nominee from a Republican president, you had to carry the water. You had to carry the water for the abortion movement and for all of these movements who wanted to destroy that person. That, thankfully, is going away. And we can get back to a time where the role of the Senate is more advice and consent, which is what the Constitution says. And we will treat these men and women nominated to the court in a more elegant way and not the way they were treated, unfortunately, over the last 35 years. One more thing I wanted to say, I don't post on Twitter that much. In fact, I haven't posted in years. But I did put a post today on Twitter saying that there's too much banning on Twitter. And that's exactly right. I hope that Elon Musk will improve the question of free speech in Twitter, because Twitter has really become a disgrace. And certain points of view are tolerated, other points of view are not tolerated. And that's not what Twitter is supposed to be about. So hopefully, now that there is a new, at least a new majority stockholder, hopefully some of these changes will take place. But Twitter has to change. There's way too much banning going on Twitter. And obviously the banning always goes in the direction of the right. You never hear anything about people in the left being canceled. It's always going in the direction of the right. So that has to change, to say the least. Again, let me remind you that our friend Bill Katz, the editor of Urgent Agenda, is going to be joining us this afternoon. And that podcast will go up in the early evening. Thank you for listening. This is Silvio Canto in Dallas, and have a great day. Bye-bye, everybody.